Welcome to Pioneer Mindset, a place where we challenge our mindset and address the discomfort in both business and life by finding clarity resulting in bold conviction. I'm your host, Garrett Ruskamp, fifth generation farmer, husband, and father from rural Nebraska. Whether you're navigating frustration from past decisions or worry about the uncertainty you face today in your business, we're going to learn from our struggles and take on new challenges with a resilient mindset. Join me as I share my journey of struggles I've faced in agriculture as a farmer and family man. I'm ready to dive into honest conversations to tackle the mindsets surrounding key issues that rural ag business owners face that will ultimately help you gain control, leading to a profitable and sustainable business. Let's adapt to Pioneer Mindset and get to it. Welcome back, everyone. So for today, we're going to continue this topic around mindset and in particularly talking about management and how we manage different things. And obviously, our mindset plays a pretty big role in how we manage things, how the way we think, the way we see things, and how all of that goes into the decisions that we make on a daily basis. So this specific topic that I'm going to talk about is probably going to relate a little bit more towards the crop side of things. I'm going to talk about some kind of a crop scenario here, specifically kind of a soybean field. But I'm going to tie it into the livestock here as we can kind of go through this. So I want to ask you, if you're a crop farmer, are you kind of the person that more or less does scouting when it comes to your different fields? Are you one of those that does kind of the drive-by crop scouting? Essentially what that is, if you don't know, is, you're literally checking your field as you're driving by the road. You're not taking the time to park the pickup, get out, actually walk into the field and see what's going on. Now, I feel like this can be pretty common, especially if we're busy. Maybe we just don't have a lot of time. Time's something that we're really short of. I'm honestly pretty guilty of this. It happens quite a bit. I'm kind of a drive-by crop scouter, and I got to thinking about this with this one particular field because that's the way I treated this field. Essentially, what this is here is a little bit of background. This one field that I'm talking about is a soybean field this year that we had some rye growing in it, and we used the cover crop as the rye was a cover crop for the soybeans. And just the way things worked out this year, we did not get that rye terminated when we wanted to. The rye grew up pretty tall. Finally, we did terminate the rye. We knocked it down. We got her decaying, and we got the soybeans sprayed the first time, and things started looking good, and we've got good moisture, and that rye is starting to kind of fall down, decay as the spring's gone on here, the summer's gone on. More of the soybeans actually became visible through that rye cover crop, which is what you want. Obviously, the soybeans need light. And so, but everything looked good, from the road, like I mentioned, that drive-by crop scouter that I typically tend to be. And unless I actually get out there, it's hard to see things. But what I'm getting at here is, think of yourself, think of your situation. How do you manage things? So typically, if I would have drove out there and maybe I'd see something big and scary out there, like some weeds starting to pop through, maybe some water hemp starting to pop through, or maybe I'd see some volunteer corn out there. And so things like that are kind of big things that we tend to notice and tend to get us thinking, okay, maybe we need to actually step out of this and dive into it a little bit more, see what's going on, see how many weeds are actually out there, see how much volunteer corn is actually coming through. It gets us thinking once we see the kind of the big obvious things. Gets us thinking maybe we should actually, dive into this a little bit more, especially when it comes to like what I was doing here is I was getting ready to spray these soybeans post with our post herbicide. And one thing when it comes to our post herbicide is we've got, clethodim in there for our corn killer, and there's crop oil. So there's two products there that we add in, which obviously costs a little bit of money, not a lot, but they cost money. And the thing about me is I don't necessarily like to put in anything unless I have to. And generally on our fields, our soybeans fields, that were corn last year, we grazed them and they stayed pretty clean. And so, okay, we're just going to pull that out. A lot of times that volunteer corn is cosmetic. It's not going to actually do a lot of damage. And so I don't like to put it in there. Okay, fair enough. This particular field, like I said, man, it looks pretty clean. So I thought, well, we don't need to put that in there. And, the weeds look pretty clean. So it ended up being the last field I had to do. I figured, well, if I run short on my herbicide, I'd rather run short. I think it'll be fine. The rye has kind of held down that the weed pressure a little bit, so it's done its job. So it looks good. But without physically getting out there and looking at the field, I never actually knew what was going on out there. And the thing that tends to do is that creates a little bit of scarcity. That creates a little bit of doubt in our mind because we don't fully know what's going on. And you don't actually know what's going on out there. And so I think, well, I made the decision. I'm not gonna put that corn killer in. I'm gonna leave that clethodim out. I think it'll be fine. So then you finally get out into the field. I was out there with the sprayer. I didn't necessarily do a ton of walking around in the field, but as from the sprayer, you can generally see quite a bit what's going on. Unless it's below the beans, well, that's kind of another story, but you can generally see what's going on. I thought, oh man, got out there and I thought, man, there's actually a fair amount of corn out here. There's a fair amount of corn that, because we actually did not graze this field. And I was kind of thinking that in the back of my mind. And I'm like, well, but it looks clean. It should be fine, right? And so get out there and we make our decisions based on it should be fine or it looks okay. And just not knowing for certain what it actually is because, like I said, I drove by the road and it looked fine. So I made the decision, didn't put it in there. Obviously, get out there and there's a little bit of corn on there. So essentially what this comes down to is I made a decision based on, well, it should be fine. It looks okay. Get out there. And now I got to live with the consequences of spraying this field without the corn killer. Now, what's going to happen? We don't know. Time will tell. The future will play out. We'll figure out whether this corn actually, competes with the soybeans or if we've got any sort of worm issues as we go to corn in the future. That's kind of why I want to take out that corn, that volunteer corn. We don't know. But either way, I made the decision based on it looks fine, it should be okay, and now I got to live with the consequences. That's just the way it goes. Now, this is, you're probably thinking, well, okay, maybe if I was a little bit better at managing my time, a little more progressive, maybe I actually had a crop scout come in, somebody that we hire that's more diligent about this. Maybe you're really good at this and you're thinking in my mind, well, why wouldn't you just go out there and scout the field ahead of time? That would make much more sense. Just go out there within 5-10 minutes, you'd figure out, okay, we need to add this and we need to add this. We need to get out here sooner because this water hemp's taken off and we need to just get after this. And you're probably thinking, yeah, we need to dive into that because unless you're out there in the field, unless you're actually taking the time to be diligent to see what's going on, to study it, to figure out what's actually out there and the issues that you're going to have or could have in the future to head them off, you're never really going to know. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, you need to do that. Okay, you're right. And to kind of tie this back to the livestock side of things, if you're more like, don't do a lot on the crop side of things, but more livestock oriented, maybe you're the same way. You're the guy that checks the cows from the road and just sees, well, I see cows out there. I don't count them. Nobody called and said the cows are out, so they should all be there. It should be fine. You're good to go. Or maybe you've got a feed yard, and so you're the kind of guy that checks the cattle from over top of the bunks and after you feed, which is generally fine. Okay, let's be honest, it's generally fine. When it comes to the cattle, this is something that, we have been guilty of in the past, if I'm being honest. But generally, what'll happen is you'll see something when it's too late. You'll see something super obvious. You'll see that steer, that calf that's hanging out by himself in the corner of the pen that didn't come up to eat. And generally, that calf's probably already running fever, and you probably didn't treat him on time because you didn't see the symptoms soon enough. And so without actually being diligent about taking the time and being intentional about getting out there and seeing what's happening, studying what's actually going on in the pen there, looking at the calves, looking at what's not normal, what's actually the outlier here, and is trying to stay on top of keeping things healthy, keeping the whole pen healthy, which ultimately keeps the whole operation healthy. Let's be honest here, and let's also talk about, like I said, tying that back to the crop side of things. Yeah, if we stay on top of things, we manage things appropriately, that's going to lead to a pretty healthy operation. Now you're probably thinking this all makes sense, but where are you going with this? Okay, I just mentioned it before, all these things that make sense. We need to manage our day-to-day as to where, we're getting out into the fields, we're being intentional about seeing what's going on out there, trying to head off these issues, really being knowledgeable about what's going on. Same with the livestock side of things. But how do we treat our finances? Do you treat your finances this way? Do you, your cash flows when you're trying to operate throughout the year? It's the same thing. I mean, you don't get that pen of cattle in, look at them once a year, once you get them in, and then walk away for the rest of the year. and hope they do okay. No, you're in there on a regular basis trying to make sure everything's going well and heading off any issues before that actually happens. But yet, we don't treat our finances this way. I was working on spraying this field the other day, and I'm just thinking, man, this is the perfect analogy that I think people could actually understand, because it's something I understand because that's the way my brain works as well. Now you're thinking, okay, but I don't have time to manage my finances. All right, well, you've got time to go scout your fields, and you know the results that come with that is you get out there and, like I said, you see what's going on, you see what you need to do, you see what you need to do to take care of the problem, head it off, but yet we don't do this with our finances. I tend to believe that it's just the way we're taught, trained, and conditioned. Okay, who wants to go sit in the computer and punch in your updated cash flow to see how things are going on, or to update your break-even analysis so you can actually get on top of how you're trying to sell your market your grain and different things like that. I mean, I could go on in here because there's lots of things we can do to stay on top of our finances and our numbers. But what I'm really trying to talk about here is the mindset. Just to really think about this as you're out in the field, as you're out in the pens, and you're trying to figure out, let's head off these issues. Let's take care of this sick calf as it comes up. That's great. I'm not saying don't do those things, but remember, how does that make you feel when you're really staying on top of this crop, especially this year? We've got really good looking crops around our area. We've had really good moisture, and it's exciting. It's so fun because there's so much potential there, so much opportunity. And if we can stay on top of this crop, we've got really high yield expectations. Let's just carry that over into how we manage our finances. That's all we got to do. We got to take that same mindset and just carry that over into our finances. And also, like I said, we're not trained, taught, and conditioned this way. And so it's usually harder. It's usually something we put off. And generally, we don't know how. Well, ultimately, at the end of the day, within Pioneer Mindset, but also Pioneer Farmer, and everything that I'm trying to do here to help provide value to other farmers and ranchers, help them stay organized so they can stay on top of their numbers, so they can be able to easily jump into a software program and update their numbers, and also have somebody to help them out with that. That's ultimately what I'm here for. And I also just think that's important for somebody to help these people out, help farmers and ranchers out. And that's where I am fulfilled by that, honestly. And that's also why I'm just trying to present this to you, because this is a shift that needs to happen, but it also isn't a shift that's going to happen overnight. Okay, let's be honest. There's things, all good things usually take time. And so remember that. Just remember, okay, maybe these are little reminders as you're out in the field, and you can remember this as you're listening to this, wherever you're at. Just remember, every time you're out in the field and you're out in the cattle pen, that, hey, I'm spending a lot of time out here. Maybe I need to remember, this is how I'm managing our day-to-day operations, and this is good, but I need to carry that over to the finances. I need to stay updated on my numbers so that way I can head off any issues, any volunteer corn, any pigweed, any respiratory issues in the livestock. It's the same thing. You can relate that over to the finances. It's the same thing. Maybe there's some big expenses coming through that I need to head off, and I need to basically project that out into the future so I can protect how I go about managing those different decisions. So that's all I'm really trying to do here, is paint the picture between the two, because it's all management within the operation. And we just really need to keep that in mind. We really need to keep in mind how we're managing our day-to-day is also how we need to manage our finances. We need to put the time, we need to be intentional about putting the time into our finances. And that's the big one there, is being intentional and being aware, because those two things can really lead to a pretty successful operation. And I can guarantee, like I keep mentioning, you're pretty intentional and you're pretty aware if you're actually out and about in the fields and in the cow yard, in the hog barn, whatever your operation consists of. You're usually pretty intentional and you're usually pretty aware of what's going on. Take the time to do the same within your finances, because that is what's going to pay you in the long run. That's what's going to keep you in business. That's what's going to keep you from getting a whole bunch of debt racked up with your bank. Be intentional and be aware. Take the time to consider these things. And so I really hope this makes sense to you. I really hope it resonates to you, because it really makes sense to me on how we manage different things, how we really make our decisions. It's all within the mindset. That's why we call this Pioneer Mindset, folks. Once again, I hope you found value in this, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for tagging along with me today as we sharpened our mindsets. If you've gained insight from today's episode, be sure to take a screenshot to share or send this episode to somebody who might also find value in it. For more, follow me on Instagram at Garrett Ruskamp or on Facebook, and join me next time for more conviction through clarity.